And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
In case you guys didn't know, today is the New Year, according to the Book of Enoch, when the calendar year hits the equilux, which is when it's equal parts day, equal parts night. This is different than the vernal equinox, where that is based off of the solar system alignment. The equilux is directly when there's equal parts day and night. Well, that was yesterday. And since the days begin at night and the days begin at night and the daytime is when we finish off the day, then yesterday would have ended the year of 2017 or whatever it is in the Hebrew.
5,000. Who knows how many hundred?
Something like that. So that happened yesterday at the end. So tonight would be the beginning of the new year. So Happy New Year. Well, in 2 weeks, we should be having the Passover.
14th of the month.
So Happy New Year. There we go. Anyways, any questions from last week? Nothing? Last Sabbath? Okay, so tonight we're going to be going over the life of Abraham. And this is where the covenant of the faith comes from Father Abraham. Not only that, he was the father of the Ishmaelites, who later on become the Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's where we have Islam in the Middle East. Their faith of religion, or their religion at that home in the Middle East, in certain parts, is Islam. It is the largest religion in the world. Okay. Well, anyways, Abraham, he was promised a certain thing through the Most High God. I'm going to read about that tonight. He had a firstborn, and that would be Ishmael. However, the covenant didn't go through him. We'll hear about that.
Son of the bondwoman.
Amen. And we're going to run into what happened at Sodom and Gomorrah, and why did the Most High God tempt Abraham to sacrifice his son? Yeah. A little crazy, all right? Yeah, this is where a lot of questions come in of who the Most High God is and his character. So, let's begin. We're going to be jumping off where we left off, the last Sabbath teaching we had, which would be in Genesis 13. And then we're going to go to the book of Josephus, and then we're going to go to the book of Jubilees to top it all off, okay? Go ahead, Dad, whenever you're ready.
All right. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, all that they had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee?
Now, do you remember from the last teaching that we had, Abraham's brother was killed in a fire? Okay, it was when Abraham challenged his father's and the idols that his father had. He destroyed them in a fire, and his brother ran in and tried to save the idols, and he died. Well, Lot is the son of Abraham's brother, Haran. Okay, so you're going to hear also Abraham referred to Lot as his brother. He's meaning as his brother's seed. Okay?
They're kin.
They are kin. continue, sir.
For we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left, then I will go to the right. Or if thou wilt depart to the right, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plains of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and he pitched his tent towards Sodom.
Now, do you remember why the land of Canaan was called Canaan? Well, if you take it back to the book of Jubilees, it literally tells us that Canaan went into Israel and took over a portion that was not his land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that's why you're going to hear Canaan being brought up over and over again. Okay? And that's because it's in the wrong land. He settled in the wrong land. Okay.
I lost my spot here. I do that a lot. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from thee, or look from the place where thou art, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, that if a man can number the dust of the earth, shall thy seed also be numbered.
So right here is the beginning of the promise that the Most High God gave to Abraham.
Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord.
So, where Abraham was at beforehand, when he traveled all that way, it seems like it's just going kind of quickly. Okay? You're going to hear about Abraham actually dwelt certain places for just a little bit longer than the way the Bible hints. Go ahead.
Chapter 14. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, and Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. All these were joined together in the vale of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kirithaim.
Did you hear Rephaim? It's argued that the Rephaim are the giants as well. Okay, there was the Nephilim, Rephaim, and other Ems throughout Canaan, the Amorites as well, that were these giants, and this is one of the very first inklings that you hear of them being called something else in the book of Genesis.
The Strong's Concordance just says it's a giant. H7497, so.
There you go.
And the Horites in their Mount Seir unto Elparan, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to Enmishpat. I don't know if I said that right. I don't know if I'm saying half of these right. Which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites, that dwelt in Hazazon-Tamar. And there went out the king of Sodom, and king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and their king Bela, the same as Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Siddim, with Chedorlaomer king of Elam, and with Tidal king of nations, Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5.
It's a lot of kings in a small land that's right by Sodom, in the land of Canaan. There was many kingdoms inside of Israel before it was taken over.
Yeah, it's not like a world war, but, you know, for that little area, that was a lot of people coming together for a fight. Different people. This is a very serious battle for the area.
Just for the whole area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vale of Sidon was full of slime pits, and the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountain. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed.
Did you hear Lot was taken? Okay, go ahead and read that again for us real quick.
And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed.
Okay, that just sounds weird. Like they just went through and just kidnapped him. Okay, now who was the one that took him? Was it not the Amorites? Well, the Assyrians? I'm sorry. The Assyrians? There's a certain people that Sodom was warring with. And it doesn't say it in here. Okay.
Yeah, it just says all the...
It doesn't say who it is. It doesn't say it, right? No, it doesn't say it. You're going to find out who it is. It's the Assyrians. Okay, this is a people that are cursed later on as well. And I'm not saying exactly why they're cursed, but the Assyrians are ancient people that have been dealing with Israel for generations.
And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram.
Those are the Amorites. Once again, those are giants. Okay.
And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus.
Okay, so right there you see that Abraham raised up his own household as soldiers, and they went over and smoked the enemy, the ones that kidnapped Lot.
And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him in the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God.
Now, Melchizedek is a very significant figure in Scripture. There's other verses that refer to him directly. In the book of Hebrews, it says that we fall under the Melchizedek priesthood, and that Christ, it hints at Christ being Melchizedek, because Melchizedek is him who has no mother or father, the Ancient of Days. He was known as the righteous king. Well, Christ is known as the righteous king. Okay? So, these are just little glimpses. We don't, to be honest, we don't really know for sure.
No, there's no real proof one way or the other. The strongest proof itself to me seems to be that Melchizedek had no father or mother. How do you explain that? Maybe it was some kind of a Hebrewism of some sort that was meaning something else back in its time. I don't know. I don't know enough about Hebrew to say one way or the other on that one, but what was it that we came across earlier? We were saying we weren't going to go over Melchizedek tonight.
But it's just that Melchizedek is a very significant figure. He is. We're going to go over a little bit later who he was in the book of Josephus, and how he was a high priest, and how he received that high priesthood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Just in a second. Go ahead, bro.
And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram, of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread, even to the shoe latchet, that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich.
Now, did you notice who he's speaking with? It's the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom later is judged later on. But you could see that Abraham interacted with the king of Sodom, and it appears he knew those people from Sodom. We're going to find out a little later just how close he was and what happened with Lot.
Save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Honor, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. Chapter 15. After these things the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing as I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me that thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said to him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness.
Now, right there, where they're saying he believed in the Lord and it counted on him for righteousness, that in itself is showing you the basic fundamentals of what faith is. He just believed what the Most High God told him. And that's what Scripture is telling us. Whatever the Most High God is telling you, man, if you really believe it's from him, you just got to believe it. Just as Abraham did. Don't let anybody else tell you anything different. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that we have as an assurance that even though Abraham was a heathen, as we talked about last time, he was still counted righteous simply based off his interaction with the Most High God and him believing what the Most High God said. Even though later on, you're going to hear he laughs.
And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds he divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abraham, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Now, that is one of the very beginnings of the prophecy from Abraham, which shows who Israel was. Israel was the one that went under bondage numerous times. And every time when they got out, the Most High God brought them out miraculously in some way, shape, or form, without question.
And this is also not referring to the slavery in Egypt.
No, this is actually referring to a future prophecy up to this point. Go ahead, bro.
Abraham was getting punished because he went to the land that is not his, so he was going to get 400 years of punishment.
Oh, this wasn't something he did wrong. This was God just telling him, you're entering a covenant with me. I'm telling you, this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I'm setting you aside to be holy and righteous. But he's basically telling Abram's sons, and daughters, were going to fall away. God's kind of giving him this heads up, but this is what's recorded. You know, your people are going to go into slavery 400 years, and it was something that really scared him. We're about to dive into that a little bit, but
Whatever.
and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass, when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold a smoking furnace, and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces.
I want you just to notice, it said, but in the 4th generation they shall come hither, for the iniquity of the Amorites not yet full.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Well, in the book of Numbers, you find out that Joshua is conquering the promised land, and the most significant beings that they run into at that time were the Amorites. And they saw the sons of Anak, who come of the giants, and they were in their own sight as grasshoppers. So they were, in other words, when they looked at the giants, they appeared as the size of a grasshopper to those giants. That's how big these giants were. You're talking about 25, 35, 45 feet. Enormous. There's evidence that there was something that's that big running around. They even have one in a museum in Switzerland where they have this enormous replica of a 25-foot skeleton. That the bones that inspired that skeleton were verified by university professionals. Forgive me. Go ahead.
In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites.
Those are all future enemies of Israel. Oh, right here, we're going to pause for a minute in the book of Genesis. We're going to see what Josephus has to say. Because if we get a little further, we're going to actually start running into some things that we might not line up exactly with the timeline. Now, we already talked about how intelligent Abraham was beforehand, how he was a pretty sly guy when it came to a sticky situation with him, his wife, and the Pharaoh. He knew exactly how to talk to the Pharaoh, and he knew how to talk to the Egyptians. Well, in the book of Josephus, it directly tells us just how intelligent he was and how much he interacted with the Egyptians. You'll be surprised what Josephus claims. Now, the one thing I got to give a little disclaimer, we don't exactly say Josephus is scripture per se. We don't say that.
Nope.
We don't say it's gospel. We don't say it's something that you should follow. But what we're showing is the ancient belief. This is what was the majority of what at least the Pharisees believed at this time, those that were around Josephus. And Josephus is really the only other author we have at that time. Okay, so this is one of the oldest understandings of this.
Sorry, I just thought it was funny because the way you're describing Josephus is kind of similar to what some people believe about the book of Jasher to the Hebrews. That the Hebrews would have referenced the book of Jasher, not necessarily as scripture,
Oh, okay.
but as a written work that you can get knowledge from, I guess.
Okay. Just go ahead and go.
Now after this, when a famine had invaded the land of Canaan, and Abram had discovered the Egyptians were in a flourishing condition, he was disposed to go down to them, both to partake of the plenty they enjoyed, and to become an auditor of their priests, and to know that what they said concerning the gods, designing either to follow them if they had better notions than he, or to convert them into a better way if his notions proved the truest. Now seeing he was to take Sarai with him, and was afraid of the madness of the Egyptians with regard to women, lest the king should kill him on occasion of his wife's great beauty, he contrived this device. He pretended to be her brother, and directed her in a dissembling way to pretend the same, for he said it would be to their benefit. Now as soon as he came into Egypt, it happened to Abram, as he supposed it would, for the fame of his wife's beauty was greatly talked of, for which reason Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, would not be satisfied with what was reported of her, but would needs see her himself, and was preparing to enjoy her.
So you see, the Pharaoh at that time was turned on by the beauty of Sarah, or Sarai at that time, and she was around 60, 65, 70 years old, because it appears again that her beauty became renowned in Egypt. So according to Josephus, from right here, it's kind of showing that there may have been in Egypt a little longer than what the Bible hints at, because the Bible makes it sound like they were just in Egypt for a minute, crossing through. But you'll find out a little later that's not exactly what happened.
But God put a stop to his unjust inclinations by sending upon him a distemper, and a sedition against his government. And when he inquired of the priests how he might be freed from these calamities, they told him that his miserable condition was derived from the wrath of God, upon the account of his inclinations to abuse the stranger's wife. He then, out of fear, asked Sarai who she was and who it was that he brought along with her, or that she brought along with her. And when he had found out the truth, he excused himself to Abram, that supposing the woman to be his sister and not his wife, he set his affections upon her, desiring an affinity with him by marrying her, but not as incited by lust to abuse her. He also made him a large present in money, and gave him leave to enter into conversation with the most learned among the Egyptians, from which conversation his virtue and his reputation became more conspicuous than they had been before.
So it's showing you that Sarah got Abraham access to the wisest men in Egypt, simply based off of her beauty, because the Most High God uses everything to those who believe. But you go ahead, bro. Keep on going. You're going to see just how deep this gets.
For whereas the Egyptians were formerly addicted to different customs and despised one another's sacred accustomed rites, and were very angry with one another on that account, Abram conferred with each of them, confuting the reasonings they made use of, every one for their own practices, demonstrated that such reasonings were vain and void of truth, whereupon he was admired by them in those conferences as a very wise man, and one of great sagacity. I don't know what that is. Sorry.
It's a new one.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up later. Anyway, when he discoursed on any subject he undertook, and this not only in understanding it, but in persuading other men also to assent to him, he communicated to them arithmetic and delivered them the science of astronomy. For before Abram came into Egypt, they were acquainted with those parts of learning, for that science came from the Chaldeans into Egypt, and from thence to the Greeks also.
So you see, Abraham was the one that taught them astronomy, arithmetic, and science, because it says that from the Chaldeans, which was Samaria, which is where we got the Tower of Babel, which is argued as the oldest civilization in modern man. So it's saying that those basic concepts came from the Chaldeans, where Abraham was from. Same area.
Mm-hmm.
But what Abraham did is he had a deeper understanding to those things, and he shared it with the Egyptians, and they obviously became wiser after that, because they are famed as great astronomers and great mathematicians well before our current understanding of astronomy and math.
Right. As soon as Abram was come back into Canaan, he parted the land between him and Lot upon account of the tumultuous behavior of their shepherds, concerning the pastures wherein they should feed their flocks. However, he gave Lot his option or leave to choose which lands he would take, and he took himself the other left, which were the lower grounds at the foot of the mountain. And he himself dwelt in Hebron, which is a city 7 years more ancient than Tunis of Egypt. But Lot possessed the land of the plain at the river Jordan, not far from the city of Sodom, which was then a fine city, but is now destroyed by the will and wrath of God, the cause of which I shall show in its proper place hereafter.
So right here, this is just a very inklings of what is to come. Because at this time that Josephus was writing this, people knew exactly where Sodom was. They knew where the ark was. They had an understanding because it was passed down from generation to generation without it being broken up with like a dark age, per se.
Okay, chapter 10, yeah?
Keep going, bro.
All right.
This is a big one right here. Actually, it's 9. You're reading 9.
Yeah.
Not 10.
All right. At this time, when the Assyrians had the dominion over Asia, the people of Sodom were in a flourishing condition, both as to riches and the number of their youth. There were 5 kings that managed the affairs of this country: Balas, Barsas, Sennabar, Sumobor, with the king of Bela, and the king led his own troops. And the Assyrians made war upon them, dividing their army into 4 parts, fought against them. Now every part of the army had its own commander, and then the army of the Assyrians, every part of the army had its own commander, and when the battle was joined, the Assyrians were conquerors, and imposed a tribute on the kings of the Sodomites, who submitted to this slavery 12 years later, and so long as they continued to pay their tribute. But on the 13th year, they rebelled, and then the army of the Assyrians came upon them, under their commanders Amraphel, Arioch, Chodorlaomer, and Tidal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going right here because I thought I was going to talk about Lot here.
These kings had laid waste all Syria and overthrown the offspring of the giants. There's your giants.
There's Ephraim.
When they were come over against Sodom, they pitched their camp at the vale called the Slime Pits, for at that time were pits in that place. But now upon the destruction of the city of Sodom, that vale became the lake Asphaltites? I don't know. As it's called.
Sounds like asphalt.
However, concerning this lake we shall speak more presently. Now when the Sodomites joined battle with the Assyrians, and the fight was very obstinate, many of them were killed, and the rest carried captive, among which captives was Lot, who had come to assist the Sodomites.
So right there it tells us that Lot came to assist the Sodomites because Lot was friends with the Sodomites. They were practicing evil and homosexuality, but Lot lived in the city. However, initially he lived outside the city, and he dwelt in between the plain and the cities. He liked chilling on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But then later on, he goes inside.
Okay, now chapter 10. When Abram heard of their calamity, he was at once afraid for Lot, his kinsman, and pitied the Sodomites, his friends and neighbors. And thinking it proper to afford them assistance, he did not delay it, but marched hastily. And the 5th night fell upon the Assyrians near Dan, for that is the name of the other spring of Jordan. And before they could arm themselves, he slew some as they were in their beds, before they could suspect any harm. And others who were not yet gone to sleep, but were so drunk they could not fight, ran away.
Did you hear that? Abraham came in like a thief in the night, man. Like a ninja.
Abraham pursued after them, till on the 2nd day he drove them into a body unto Hobah, a place belonging to Damascus, and thereby demonstrated that victory does not depend on multitude and the number of hands, but the alacrity and courage of soldiers overcome the most numerous bodies of men.
No, what was an alacrity?
Alacrity was when you're like really ready accepting something. We were just looking at the definition earlier, and it was like, somebody accepts an invitation with alacrity. You're like, yes, let's go.
And that's what it was showing, that Abraham was that overwhelmed with joy to go and do this righteous act. And honestly, that's showing us that when we go and do something, that's how we should be. We should have that alacrity in anything we're doing. Just like the Most High God did with Abraham. Go ahead.
So Abraham, when he had saved the captive Sodomites, who had been taken by the Assyrians, and Lot also, his kinsman, returned home in peace. Now the king of Sodom met him at a certain place which they called the King's Dale, where Melchizedek, king of the city Salem, received him. That name signifies the righteous king, and such he was without dispute, insomuch that on his account he was made the priest of God. However, they afterward called Salem Jerusalem. Now this Melchizedek supplied Abram's army in an hospitable manner, and gave them provisions in abundance, and as they were feasting he began to praise him, and to bless God for subduing his enemies under him.
So it's showing us that Abraham went to Melchizedek as a priest, just like it was in the scriptures. And Melchizedek got his priesthood from being a righteous king.
And when Abram gave him the 10th part of his prey, he accepted the gift. But the king of Sodom desired Abram to take the prey, but entreated that he might have those men restored to him whom Abram had saved from the Assyrians, because they belonged to him. But Abram would not do so, nor would make any other advantage of that prey than what his servants had eaten, but still insisted that he should afford part to his friends that had assisted him in the battle. The first of them was called Eshcol, and then Ener, and Mamre. And God commanded his virtue, and said, Thou shalt not, however, lose the rewards thou hast deserved to receive by such thy glorious actions. He answered, And what advantage will it be to me to have such rewards when I have none to enjoy them after me? For he was hitherto childless. And God promised that he should have a son, and that his posterity should be very numerous, insomuch that their numbers should be like the stars.
It's telling us right there the same covenant that we were just listening in the book of Genesis. It's the same covenant of the multitude of children that Abraham would be blessed with.
When he heard that, he offered a sacrifice to God, as he commanded him. The manner of the sacrifice was this. He took an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram in like manner of 3 years old, and a turtle-dove, and a pigeon. And as he was enjoined, he divided the 3 former, but the birds he did not divide. After which, before he built his offer, where the birds of prey flew about, as desirous of blood, a divine voice came to him, declaring that their neighbors would be grievous to his posterity, when they should be in Egypt for 400 years, during which time they should be afflicted, but afterwards should overcome their enemies, should conquer the Canaanites in war, and possess themselves out of their land and of their cities.
Okay, so from right there, you're seeing the prophecy also being told in the book of Josephus of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think from right here, we're going to go now into the book of Jubilees to catch up to where we're at. Jubilees does have a faster pace when it comes to this on this side. So we're going to begin at Jubilees chapter 13, verse 1. Go ahead, bro.
And Abram journeyed from Haran, and he took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother Haran's son, to the land of Canaan. And he came unto Ashur, and proceeded to Shechem, and dwelt near a lofty oak. And he saw, and behold, the land was very pleasant from the entering of Hamath to the lofty oak. And the Lord said to him, To thee and thy seed will I give this land. And he built an altar there, and offered thereon a burnt sacrifice to the Lord, who had appeared to him. And he removed from thence unto the mountain, Bethel on the west, and Ai on the east, and pitched his tent there. And he saw, and behold, the land was very good and wide, and everything grew thereon, vines, figs, and pomegranates, oaks, and ilexes, and terebinths, and olive trees, and cedars, and cypresses, and date trees, and all trees of the field, and there was water on the mountains. And he blessed the Lord who had led him out of Ur of the Chaldees, and brought him to this land.
So right there, it tells you again that Abraham came from Ur of Chaldees, where in the book of Josephus, it told us that's where math, astronomy, and science came from.
Right.
Then through Egypt. Abraham just had a better understanding of that, dwelling with those who had that first understanding. Probably right after the Tower of Babel, they set that up and still retain that.
And it came to pass in the first year, in the 7th week, on the new moon of the first month, that he built an altar on this mountain, and called on the name of the Lord. Thou, the eternal God, art my God. And he offered on the altar a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord, that he should go with him, and not forsake him all the days of his life. And he removed from thence, and went towards the south, and he came to Hebron, and Hebron was built at that time. And he dwelt there 2 years. And he went thence into the land of the south, Bealoth, and there was a famine in the land. And Abram went into Egypt in the third year of the week, and he dwelt in Egypt 5 years before his wife was torn away from him.
So it tells us in Jubilees that Abraham was in Egypt for at least 5 years. Well, that's how her beauty became renowned. They didn't have telephones. They didn't have a way of getting things around in a quick way. So it shows you that during that time, during the time that he dwelt there, it took an accumulation of people. They got back to Pharaoh to tell her, hey, have you seen Abraham's wife? Or Abraham, the woman who lives with Abraham.
You saying she wasn't a supermodel? Like she wasn't just going to walk into town and everybody just falls in love with her? Love at first sight? None of that?
I don't think everybody saw her.
Okay.
It takes time to see you.
Now Taneas in Egypt was at that time built 7 years after Hebron. And it came to pass when Pharaoh seized Sarai, the wife of Abram, that the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Abram was very glorious by reason of the possessions in sheep and cattle and asses and horses and camels and menservants and maidservants, and in silver and gold exceedingly. And Lot also, his brother's son, was wealthy. And Pharaoh gave back Sarai, the wife of Abram, and sent him out of the land of Egypt, and he journeyed to a place where he had pitched his tent at the beginning, to the place of the altar, with Ai on the east and Bethel on the west. And he blessed the Lord his God, who had brought him back in peace. And it came to pass in the 41st Jubilee, in the 3rd year of the 1st week, that he returned to this place, and offered thereon burnt sacrifice, and called on the name of the Lord, and said, Thou, the Most High God, art my God, forever and ever. And in the 4th year of this week, Lot parted from him, and Lot dwelt in Sodom, and the men of Sodom were sinners exceedingly. And it grieved him in his heart that his brother's son had parted from him, for he had no children. In that year when Lot was taken captive, the Lord said unto Abraham, after that Lot had parted from him, in the 4th year of this week, Lift up thine eyes from the place where thou art dwelling, northward and southward, and westward and eastward. For all that land which thou seest I will give to thee and thy seed forever. I will make thy seed as the sand of the sea. Though a man may number the dust of the earth, yet thy seed shall not be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length and the breadth of it, and see it all. For to thy seed will I give it. And Abram went to Hebron and dwelt there. And in this year came Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Selasar, and Turgal, king of nations, and slew the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Sodom fled, and many fell through the wounds in the vale of Siddim by the salt sea. And they took captive Sodom and Adam and Zeboim, and they took captive Lot also, the son of Abram's brother, and all his possessions, and they went to Dan. And one who had escaped came and told Abram that his brother's son had been taken captive, Abram armed his household servants for Abram and for his seed a tenth of the first. Oh, it looks like there's a fragment missing.
Mhm.
Okay. For Abram and his seed a tenth of the first fruits of the Lord, and the Lord ordained it as an ordinance forever that they should give it to the priests who served before him, that they should possess it forever. And to this law there is no limit of days, for he hath ordained it for the generations forever, that they should give to the Lord the tenth of everything, of the seed and of the vine, or of the wine, and of the oil, and the cattle, and the sheep. And
Right there is talking about tithing.
Yeah.
From the very beginning. And yes, we do understand we should be giving in a tithing system. It's just this was set up for the Levites.
Right.
Okay, bro.
And to this law there is no limit of days, for he hath ordained it for the generations forever, that they should give to the Lord the tenth of everything, the seed of the wine, the oil, the cattle, the sheep. And he gave it unto priests to eat and to drink with joy before him. And the king of Sodom came to him, and bowed himself before him, and said, Our Lord Abraham, give unto us the souls which thou hast rescued, but let the booty be thine. And Abram said unto him, I lift my hands up to the Most High God, that from a thread to a shoe latchet I shall not take aught that is thine, lest thou shouldst say, I have made Abram rich, save only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, these shall take their portion.
Okay, yeah, we're going to keep on going.
After these things, in the 4th year of this week, on the new moon of the 3rd month, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a dream, saying, Fear not, Abram. I am thy defender, and thy reward will be exceeding great. And he said, Lord, Lord, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go hence childless? The son of Masech, the son of my handmaid, is the Damasek Eliezer, for he will be my heir, and to me thou hast given no seed. And he said to him, This man will not be thy heir, but one that will come out of thine own bowels, he will be thine heir. And he looked toward heaven, and beheld the stars, and he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and it was counted to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee the land of the Canaanites to possess it forever, and I will be God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And he said, Lord, Lord, well, whereby shall I know that I inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years, a goat of 3 years, a sheep of 3 years, and a turtle dove and a pigeon. And he took all these in the middle of the month, and he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron. And he built there an altar, and sacrificed all these, and poured their blood upon the altar, and divided them in the midst, and laid them over against each other, but the birds he divided not. And the birds came down upon the pieces, and Abram drove them away, and did not suffer the birds to touch them. And it came to pass, when the sun had set, that an ecstasy fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And it was said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. And it came to pass, when the sun had set, and they shall bring them into bondage, and afflict them 400 years. And the nation to whom they will be in bondage will I judge, and after that they shall come forth thence with much substance, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return hither, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And he awoke from his sleep, and he arose, and the sun had set, and there was a flame, and behold, a furnace was smoking, and a flame of fire passed between the pieces. And on that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, To thy seed will I give this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Perizzites, and the Rephaim, and the Phacharites, and the Hivites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites.
Did I hear Fakerites? Well, you see that Abraham cut up the animals and laid them out.
Yeah.
And the birds were going for them. It wasn't until a flame fell onto the pieces was that a sign that the Most High God accepted it.
Uh-huh.
And that was the same thing we saw with the prophets. Elijah had the same thing that was happening to him. And even in the temple, there was supposed to be no strange fire. It was supposed to be a fire that the Most High provided.
Right.
So, just thought that was interesting to see that there. That I hope everybody gathered that it was fire that was consuming that sacrifice.
And the day passed, and Abram offered the pieces and the birds and their fruit offerings and their drink offerings, and the fire devoured them. And on that day we made a covenant with Abram according as we had covenanted with Noah in this month. And Abram renewed the festival and ordinance for himself forever. And Abram rejoiced and made all these things known to Sarai his wife, and he believed that he would have seed, but she did not bear. And Sarai advised her husband Abram, and said unto him, Go in unto Hagar my Egyptian maid, and may it be that I shall build up seed unto thee by her. And Abram hearkened unto the voice of Sarai his wife, and unto her do so. And Sarai took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to Abram her husband to be his wife. And he went into her, and she conceived and bare him a son, and called his name Ishmael in the 5th year of this week, and in the 86th year of the life of Abram.
All right. Well, as you see, any time that the husband hearkened to the wife in Scripture of the Old Testament, it brought some calamity later. We'll see.
I think you're talking about the polygyny thing, right?
Yeah, you'll see. Anytime that they did that, it just brought more problems.
Yeah.
More women, more problems. So we're gonna take a little break right now. We're gonna keep back coming with the Book of Jubilees. Or we're gonna come back with the Book of Jubilees. I think we need a stretch. It looks like Mac's a little tired. So
sounds good.
All right. So we're gonna be back at 10:07. So just give us a little bit of time. All right, welcome back. So we're going to continue with the life of Abraham, and we're going to go into the book of Jubilees, chapter 15. Then we're going to go back to the book of Genesis to continue.
So right here. And in the 5th year of the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, Abram celebrated the feast of first fruits of the grain harvest. And he offered new offerings on the altar, the first fruits of the produce unto the Lord, an heifer and a goat and a sheep on the altar as a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord. Their fruit offerings and their drink offerings he offered upon the altar with frankincense. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, I am God Almighty. Approve thyself before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him and said, Behold, my ordinance is with thee, and thou shalt be the father of many nations. Neither shalt thy name be any more be called Abram, but thy name from henceforth, even forever, shall be Abraham. For the father of many nations have I made thee.
So right there, that's when the Most High God changed the name of Abram to Abraham, making him the father of many nations.
And I will make thee very great, and I will make thee into nations, and kings shall come forth from thee. And I shall establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, throughout their generations, for an eternal covenant, so that I may be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give to thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land where thou hast been a sojourner, in the land of Canaan, that thou mayest possess it forever, and I will be their God. And the Lord said unto Abram, And as for thee, do thou keep my covenant, thou and thy seed after thee, and circumcise ye every male among you, and circumcise your foreskins, that it shall be a token for an eternal covenant between me and you. And the child on the 8th day shall ye circumcise every male throughout your generations, him that is born in the house, or whom ye have bought with money from any stranger, whom ye have acquired, who is not of thy seed.
So right there, Abraham was told to circumcise all. This would include Ishmael. So the Ishmaelites were also circumcising at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just Moses that was told to circumcise the males. Abraham had this going on with his very first child, Ishmael, which is one of the things you find in the Arabs. You'll find them still practicing circumcision, and in Egypt, which is why Paul told us circumcision doesn't profit you anything, because there were other nations that were already practicing circumcision, and even though it was a part of the covenant of Moses, all that was going back to Abraham, showing the lineage, that covenant that Abraham had, which was given to his other children as well.
And the uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin on the 8th day, that soul shall be cut off from his people, for he has broken my covenant. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, her name shall be no more called Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her, and give thee a son by her. And I will bless him, and he shall become a nation, and kings of nations shall proceed from him. And Abraham fell on his face and rejoiced, and said in his heart, Shall a son be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90, bring forth? And Abraham said unto God, O that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Yea, and Sarah shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him, an everlasting covenant, and for his seed after him. And as for Ishmael also have I heard thee, And behold, I will bless him, and make him great, and multiply him exceedingly, and he shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to thee in these days and the next year. And he left off speaking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham did according as God had said unto him, and he took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, whom he had bought with his money, every male in his house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin.
So it's showing you once again, through the faith that what Abraham had, he committed the act of circumcision. This was him telling everybody else he believed the Most High God by doing that one act. It wasn't him just saying, I believe. He literally did something.
There was a work that showed his faith.
Mm-hmm.
And Abraham did according as God had said unto him, and he took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, whom he had bought with his money, every male in his house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin. This law is for all the generations forever, and there is no circumcision of the days, and no omission of 1 day out of the 8 days, for it is an eternal ordinance, ordained and written on the heavenly tablets. And everyone that is born, the flesh of whose foreskin is not circumcised on the 8th day, belongs not to the children of the covenant which the Lord made with Abraham, but to the children of destruction. Nor is there, moreover, any sign on him that he is the Lord's, but he is destined to be destroyed, and slain from the earth, and to be rooted out of the earth, for he has broken the covenant of our God, of the Lord our God. For all the angels of the presence and all the angels of sanctification have been so created from the day of their creation. Before the angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification, he sanctifieth Israel, that they should be with him and with his holy angels. And do thou command the children of Israel, and let them observe the sign of this covenant for their generations as an eternal ordinance, and they will not be rooted out of the land. For the command is ordained for a covenant, that they should observe it forever among all the children of Israel. For Ishmael and his sons and his brothers and Esau, the Lord did not cause to approach him, and he chose them not because they are the children of Abraham, because he knew them, but he chose Israel to be his people. And he sanctified it and gathered it from amongst all the children of men, for there are many nations and people, and all are his, and over all hath he placed spirits in authority to lead them astray from him.
Did you hear that? He placed spirits of authority to mislead. That's not because of the power of the Most High God. Sorry.
And he sanctified it and gathered it from amongst all the children of men, for there are many nations and peoples, and all are his, and over all hath he placed spirits in authority to lead them astray from... Oh, I already read that, sorry. But over Israel he did not appoint any angel or spirit, for he alone is their ruler. And he will preserve them and require them at the hand of his angels and his spirits, and at the hand of all his powers, in order that he may preserve them and bless them, and that they may be his and may be theirs from henceforth forever. And now I announce unto thee that the children of Israel will not keep true to this ordinance, and they will not circumcise their sons according to all this law. For in the flesh of their circumcision they will omit the circumcision of their sons, and of all them sons of Beliar. Usually that's Belial. Weird. Anyway. Sons of Belial will leave their sons uncircumcised as they were born. And there will be great wrath from the Lord against the children of Israel, because they have forsaken his covenant, and turned aside from his word, and provoked and blasphemed, inasmuch as they do not observe the ordinance of this law. For they have treated their members like the Gentiles, so that they may be removed and rooted out of the land. And there will no more be pardon or forgiveness unto them, so that there should be forgiveness and pardon for all the sin of this eternal error.
Alright, so as you can hear, Abraham was promised many things, and it affected Ishmael as well. However, in the book of Jubilees, it tells you that Israel is going to have, one, the Most High God ruling over them, and two, it doesn't matter what they're doing when it comes to circumcisions and stuff, because they're going to fall away from doing it. Even though it was given to them beforehand, they're going to neglect it and fall in, just like the heathens did. It says something about them treating their members as the heathens do.
Yeah.
That's wild. Anyways, let's go to the book of Genesis. We're going to pick up back where we were to see how Genesis is telling the same story of Abraham. Remember, this was from the book of Jubilees. It's a slightly different perspective. Go ahead, bro.
Genesis 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid, that it may be I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened unto the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I will flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren.
That is describing the Arabs pretty good right there, honestly. Because the Arabs are known as being intense, wild, very hard to understand at times. But yet they dwell right in the middle of the Israelites and the other seed of Abraham.
And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Bir Lahairoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. Chapter 17. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name be any more called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee.
And right there it just tells you that's when the Most High God changed Abraham's name in the book of Genesis, which is Genesis 17.
And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee, and I will establish my covenant between me and thy seed after thee, in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations. He that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell on his face, and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, that is 90 years old, bear? And Abraham said unto God, O that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed. And thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day, as God had said unto him. And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin.
Ouch.
Yeah. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the selfsame day Abraham was circumcised, and Ishmael his son, and all the men of his house born in the house, bought with money of the stranger, were circumcised with him. And I'm betting not a lot else got done that day.
Not by the minute, at least.
Chapter 18. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent in the door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. When he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye in your hearts. After that ye shall pass on. For therefore are ye come to your servant? And they said, So do.
Now who
Or
is this?
so do as thou hast said.
Isn't this the angel? Or this is the Most High God. And 2 angels.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And Abram hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran into the herd, and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat.
Now, if you see, it's mixing meat and milk right there,
Yeah,
which is totally against what modern Judaism teaches.
yeah.
They basically say you cannot do what Abraham just did. Just show them that. It renounces anything that's trying to say we shouldn't be mixing milk and meat.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and were stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah in the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid.
Wow, lied.
And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And the men rose up from thence and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them.
I don't think he did. And he would be
Went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And the Lord said, Because of the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because of their sin is very grievous, I will go down now, and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know it. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord. Mm-hmm. And Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked. And that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, I will spare all the place for their sakes.
Wow.
And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for the lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. And he spake unto him yet again, and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake. And he said unto him, O Lord, sorry, lost my space here. And he said unto him, O, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall be 30 found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there.
Wow.
And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake.
Now, did you catch that? He started off with 50 men and was reasoning with God, saying, would you destroy Sodom even if there were 50 righteous men in the city? And Most High God said, no, I won't do it. Well, Abraham, known as being a great debater, a great orator, a great articulator, and a very wise man, he reasoned with God to get all the way down to 10. And check it out. This is what happens.
And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. Chapter 19.
Nope. Yeah, actually, keep on going. Yeah, we're going to keep on going for it. Go ahead.
And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened cake, or unleavened bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter.
Mm.
And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men which came in unto thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we might know them. And Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And they said, Stand back. And they said, Again, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door.
So as you see, the men of Sodom were reasoning with Lot to try to get the men who were visiting Lot. But they were angels. It's just Lot didn't know that. But yeah, neither did the men of Sodom. So that's why they were trying to sleep with him. That's how wicked that place was, bro. And Lot, he even tried to give up his daughters. As messed up as that sounds, he tried to give his daughters up to that crowd. And the men were not interested in it. They wanted that angel stuff. Go ahead, bro.
But the men put forth their hands, and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides, son-in-law, and thy sons and thy daughters, whatsoever thou hast in the city? Bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which were married with his daughters, and said, Up! Oh, lost my space again. Here we are. And said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law.
You see, Lot had other daughters as well. And Lot went to go warn those that were married to those other daughters, like, hey, get up out of here. And they weren't listening. So it just, most people don't see that when Lot is going around, he's actually talking to family, trying to get them out of there.
And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, and the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth, and set him without the city. Oh.
Nope.
And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters. I already read that. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life. Look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. Behold now, this city near to flee unto, and it is a little one. O let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto him, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city, for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. And his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt.
Now, right there, it shows that Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt. There has been findings of this woman in the Middle East of a pillar of salt. All you have to do is Google Lot's wife, salt. And it's still there to this day.
And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. And he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. And Lot went up out of Zoar, and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cave, and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not man in the earth, to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in, and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow, that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in, and lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father.
Did you hear that? Lot impregnated his daughters.
That is incest.
You'll find out there are many things that Genesis speaks about, or that happened in Genesis, that in the law later on it's forbade. That being one.
This is something that wasn't clarified at that point, actually. There was nobody that ran around saying incest was wrong at this point.
I thought, previous.
Didn't Abraham marry his sister?
Yeah. On that time, I thought since so long, there's other people on earth. Am I right?
Yes, but it was still during that time that it wasn't exactly outlawed that you couldn't marry within the family that way. Although it's still not considered righteous.
He impregnated his daughters.
Yes, I believe this is the father of, this is how the Moabites came about.
Uh-huh.
Give me a sec.
And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day.
Okay.
You have to keep going on 20?
Give me a sec. Yeah. We should go to the book of Jubilees.
Okay.
Because that's going to talk about the destruction. And you should have been on 16, right?
That's where we left off, yeah.
Go ahead.
Chapter 16 in Jubilees. And on the new moon of the 4th month, we appeared unto Abraham at the oak of Mamre. And we talked with him, and we announced to him that a son would be given to him by Sarah his wife. And Sarah laughed, for she heard that we had spoken these words with Abraham. And we admonished her, and she became afraid, and denied that she had laughed on account of the words.
We just heard that.
We just heard that. And we told her the name of her son, as his name is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, Isaac. And that when we returned to her at a set time, she would have conceived a son. And in this month the Lord executed his judgments on Sodom, Gomorrah, and Zeboim, and all the region of Jordan, and he burned them with fire and brimstone, and destroyed them unto this day, even as I have declared unto thee all their works, that they are wicked and sinners exceedingly, and that they defile themselves and commit fornication in their flesh, and work uncleanness on the earth. And in like manner, God will execute judgment on the places where they have done according to the uncleanness of the Sodomites, like unto the judgment of Sodom. But Lot we saved, for God remembered Abraham, and sent him out from the midst of the overthrow. And he and his daughters committed sin upon the earth, such as had not been on the earth since the days of Adam till his time, for the man lay with his daughters.
See, it tells you right there, it was not exactly looked as positive for what they did. That's why it was mentioned in Scripture.
And behold, it was commanded and engraven concerning all his seed on the heavenly tablets to remove them and root them out and execute judgment upon them, like the judgment of Sodom, and to leave no seed of the man on the earth on the day of condemnation. And in this month Abraham moved from Hebron and departed and dwelt in Kadesh and Shur in the mountains of Gerar. And in the middle of the 5th month he moved from thence, and he dwelt at the well of the oath. In the middle of the 6th month the Lord visited Sarah, and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. And she bare a son in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, at the time of which the Lord had spoken to Abraham. On the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Isaac was born. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant which is ordained forever. And in the 6th year of the 4th week we came to Abraham to the well of the oath, and appeared to him, as we told Sarah that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son, and should see them before he died, but that in Isaac should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his sons should be Gentiles, and be reckoned with the Gentiles, because of the sons of Isaac one should become a holy seed, and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles. For he should become the portion of the Most High, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of God, that it should be unto the Lord a people for his possession, above all nations, that it should become a kingdom and priests and a holy nation. And we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him. And they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And he built there an altar to the Lord, who had delivered him, and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. He celebrated a festival of joy in this month 7 days, near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built booths for himself and for his servants on this festival, and he was the first to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth.
Tells you right there that Abraham was the first to build booths and to celebrate the Feast of the Tabernacles, which is what we do in the fall.
And during these 7 days he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he-goat for a sin offering, that he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed. And as a thank offering, 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, and 7 he-goats, and their fruit offerings and their drink offerings. And he burnt all the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering unto the Lord for a sweet-smelling savor. And morning and evening he burnt fragrant substances, frankincense and galbanum, and stacte, and nard, and myrrh, and spice, and costum. All these he offered, crushed, mixed together in equal parts, and pure. And he celebrated this feast 7 days, rejoicing with all his heart, with all his soul, and he and all those who were in his house. There was no stranger with him, nor any that was uncircumcised. And he blessed his Creator who had created him in his generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness for the eternal generations, and from him a holy seed, so that it should become like him who made all things. And he blessed and rejoiced and called the name of the festival of the Lord a joy acceptable to the Most High God.
Did he just describe Christ when he was saying that from him would arise a plan of righteousness for the eternal generation?
Yeah.
From him a holy seed that should become like him who made all things. So if anybody ever asks, is there prophecy of Christ in the book of Jubilees? There is prophecy of Christ in the book of Jubilees.
Yeah. Lost my spot.
Well,
And he blessed and rejoiced, and he called the name of this festival the festival of the Lord, a joy acceptable to the Most High God. And we blessed him forever, and all his seed after him throughout the generations of the earth, because he celebrated this festival in its season according to the testimony of the heavenly tablets. For this reason it is ordained on the heavenly tablets concerning Israel that they shall celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days with joy, in the 7th month acceptable before the Lord, a statute forever throughout their generations, every year. And to this there is no limit of days, for it is ordained forever regarding Israel that they should celebrate it and dwell in booths, and set wreaths upon their heads, and take leafy boughs and willows from the book.
so it's supposed to be forever.
Forever.
So that means even when Christ returns back, we're going to be doing this.
And Abraham took branches of palm trees and the fruit of goodly trees, and every day going round the altar with the branches 7 times a day in the morning, he praised and gave thanks to his God for all things in joy.
All right, this is going to be the last chapter, and this is going to tell us why the Most High tempted Abraham. Okay? Should be 17, right?
Jubilees, chapter 17.
Okay.
And in the first year of the 5th week, Isaac was weaned in this Jubilee. And Abraham made a great banquet in the 3rd month on the day his son Isaac was weaned. And Ishmael, the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, was before the face of Abraham his father in his place. And Abraham rejoiced and blessed God because he had seen his sons and had not died childless. And he remembered the words which he had spoken to him on the day which Lot parted from him. And he rejoiced because the Lord had given him seed upon the earth to inherit the earth. And he blessed with all his mouth the Creator of all things. And Sarah saw Ishmael playing and dancing, and Abraham rejoicing with great joy. And she became jealous of Ishmael, and said to Abraham, "Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman will not be heir with my son Isaac." And the thing was grievous in Abraham's sight, because of his maidservant, and because of his son, that he should drive them from him. And God said to Abraham, "Let it not be grievous in thy sight, because of the child and because of the bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken to her words, and do them. For in Isaac shall thy name and seed be called." And God said to Abraham, same one. "But as for the son of this bondwoman, I will make him a great nation, because he is of thy seed." And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and placed them on the shoulders of Hagar and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba, and the water in the bottle was spent, and the child thirsted, and was not able to go on, and fell down.
Ishmael was thirsty and couldn't take it anymore. And Abraham only sent out a little bit of water with his second wife and his son, firstborn.
And his mother took him and cast him under an olive tree, and went and get under there.
Exactly.
And went and sat her down over against him at the distance of a bowshot, for she said, "Let me not see the death of my child." And as she sat, she wept. And an angel of God, one of the holy ones, said unto her, "Why weepest thou, Hagar? Arise, take the child, and hold him in thine hand, for God hath heard thy voice, and hath seen the child." And she opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled her bottle with water, and gave her child to drink. And she arose and went towards the wilderness of Paran. And the child grew and became an archer, And God was with him. And his mother took him a wife from among the daughters of Egypt. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Nebaioth, I guess.
Yeah.
For she said, the Lord was nigh to me when I called upon him.
Now this is the last point that we made. Is coming up right here.
And it came to pass in the 7th week in the 1st year thereof, in the 1st month in this Jubilee, on the 12th of this month, there were voices in heaven regarding Abraham, that he was faithful in all that he told him,
Wow.
and that he loved the Lord, and that in every affliction he was faithful. And the prince Mastema came and said before God, Behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son, and he delights in him above all things else. Bid him offer him as a burnt offering on the altar. Thou wilt see if he will do this command, and thou wilt know if he is faithful in everything wherein thou dost try him.
What?
And the Lord knew that Abraham was faithful in all his afflictions, for he had tried him through his country and with famine, and had tried him with the wealth of kings, and had tried him again through his wife, when she was torn from him,
Praise the Most High.
and with circumcision, and had tried him through Ishmael and Hagar, his maidservant, when he sent them away. And in everything where he tried him, he was found faithful, and his soul was not impatient, and he was not slow to act, for he was faithful and a lover of the Lord.
Did you see that? It said that the Most High tried Abraham several times with the famine, taking him to Egypt with his wife, with Ishmael. He just kept testing, and Abraham proved faithful the whole time. That is what it means to have faith. It's exactly what it means to have faith right there. He continuously kept the law, kept the commandments, worshipped God, did everything he was supposed to. And as you can see, it wasn't just God being random, like, show me that you love me. It was literally Mastema who came unto the Most High God and said, he ain't going to love you. Go ahead. Try him. Try him with the son. But we already know Abraham was faithful. All right, well, this should be it right about here.
Where to next?
Is this it?
It's the end of 17.
Oh, we're done. It's been 2 hours. I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Dad. You did a lot of reading tonight. You ran all over the place. We're going to pick this back up next week. Right here in the book of Genesis is going to be talking directly about this. However, we're going to already know where Abraham got this test from originally. Okay? Anyways, we will see you come the Passover. So we hope that you guys have a great day and have a great New Year.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.